we start with this event, and we will hope that more people join us soon. So a very quick introduction on my side. My name is Giulia Macagno. I'm heading the EIB Technical Secretariat of the City Climate Finance GAP Fund, and I will be not speaking today, but we are really in the driving seat for organizing this event. So welcome to everyone. I will now give the floor to the moderator. Just very quickly, please note that on the right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, you should have the possibility to ask questions. There is a Q&A option that is open in case you have questions, and we will do our best. Although we have a pretty packed schedule, we will do our best to see if we can respond to some of those questions if you have them. And also please note that this meeting and this event is recorded, so it will be possible then to access the recording and share it with people who maybe cannot be with us today. Thank you very much. With this, I'll leave the floor to Priscilla Negreiros, who will moderate this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, everyone. Well, I'm actually at COP27 in Egypt, and the internet is not the best feature during the meeting, so hopefully we're going to go together till the end. But I would love to welcome all of you to the GAP Fund event on supporting cities and preparing climate action projects. We plan today to discuss and understand the lessons learned from urban technical assistance facilities. So for those that I don't know, my name is Priscilla Negreiros. I work for Climate Policy Initiative, and I lead the city's Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, and we serve as the main multi-level and multi-stakeholder coalition aimed at closing the investment gap. So we also host Lucy, which the GAP Fund is a very part and active members, and in Lucy we elevate, we track commitments by the Alliance members, and we also want to increase coordination. And I think this particularly event has this feature showing how project preparation facilities can work together and show lessons learned. So at COP, I have to say, I have been hearing a lot about the GAP Fund on side events that not necessarily the GAP Fund is organizing, which is it's a great news. So we see that the GAP Fund has been a source of support for cities, and personally from someone that has followed up the creation of the GAP Fund not so long ago. It's quite impressive as this fund, quite new fund, has been able to make such a difference in the space. And we are talking about this space, what it is. So timely climate action requires finance. That's all we have been talking during this weeks of negotiation, and we need that fast and we need at scale. So most of the finance need to go at the city level, and for many reasons. So at the city levels, that's where we talk about energy. That's where most of the energy is consumed. Around 60 to 80% is most of what the emissions. So also very cities are responsible for roughly 70%. And I know that most of you know these numbers by heart, but never too much to remember that also in terms of economic growth, the cities generate a lot of growth. So we still need to be talking about urban climate finance here at COP at least, and I think this event comes in the context of COP. We are talking a lot of climate finance, but we're not talking as much as about cities as we should. Because if all of these big areas are being developed and happening in cities, that's all about what we should be talking about. So what we're going to do today throughout this event is, one, we're going to show concrete examples and lessons learned from activities that the City Climate Finance GAP Fund and Felicity, among other project preparations, have developed. We want to give the floor for current and past local partners from different facilities so they can share their challenges and experience. And we want to inspire more climate action and show ways that cities can receive technical support. So we're going to focus a lot on technical support. Before we start all that, let me just frame you a bit of the challenges that cities are facing, but also the overall support of project preparation. And then I think cities, 1 year ago, we would have said that cities have been hard for the coronavirus pandemic, and we wouldn't think we would never think that was something worse than that. And then welcome 2022, cities have also faced many other challenges of many of us. So the microeconomic crisis, high energy prices, rising cost of living, and it has touched almost every level of society. Probably a lot of you are feeling it personally, but cities particularly. So climate change has been, of course, unprioritized and delayed in many parts of the globe. So we still see challenges on capacity constraints on the side of government, municipalities, as well as other financial barriers. We have budget restrictions of many municipalities that cannot fund projects within their own budgets. But we are also, cities are also asked to deliver investor-ready, bankable projects, those magical words that we hear very often. And for that, they need support. And I think what we want to talk here is like the role of project preparation facilities in responding and supporting cities to go through those challenges. So for those that don't work necessarily with project preparation, what we call PPFs, they can support city in developing bankable projects, typically from the project concept, the design, the scoping. They can provide a very variety of supports depending on the project state. So we know, for example, the GAP fund that we know well, it's early stage, so they work on concept design and scoping, but there are a lot of other project preparation facilities. They're supporting cities on pre-feasibility studies and feasibility studies, and even structure and transaction. Of course, that we don't have enough support as we should, but there is a very, very impressive role of project preparation facilities. What we try to do in CCFLA and LUCI is to work hard with those project preparation facilities to coordinate, to accelerate their work. And we do that through LUCI, of course, but also the Project Preparation Action Group. So we have been developing a lot together. We have a directory of project preparation facilities where we map where they work. Our plan for next year is definitely to improve that, to understand a bit better what cities do they work on. We have also worked with some project preparation facilities to try to harmonize application forms. This is very useful tool for the cities that actually have to respond to many different applications from project preparation facilities. So how we can coordinate better the work of these institutions. And we also trying to do more work locally. So we started with Mexico, but we have plans to do it more. So I'll stop talking because you don't want to hear me. You came here to hear the cities, the projects, and the lessons learned. And before, I'm very happy to invite Paul, who is here at my side, to talk a little bit more about the framing, the political importance of urban climate action, particularly in the context of climate negotiations now at COP. And Paul is a policy officer in the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. So thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Priscilla. Get ready here quickly. Okay. I guess you can hear me. Representatives from EIB and World Bank and the UNCDF city representatives and audience, thanks so much for joining our online conference on supporting cities preparing climate action projects. I'm afraid I'm going to have to repeat a few things that Priscilla said in my speech, but not too much, I hope. We all know that cities are responsible for the majority of carbon emissions, and the time to act is really now, which we see here at COP also. It's really about implementation right now. We need to reduce emissions and adapt to climate change in cities if we want to keep 1.5 degrees in reach, and that also on the city level that we really ensure that we live in inclusive, resilient and livable cities, not only now, but also in the future. And for that, we need to really invest trillions of dollars to build climate-friendly and future-fit cities, their buildings, their infrastructure, but investments are lagging enormously despite cities having so many promising and innovative ideas already. Cities often lack critical resources, they lack technical and planning capacity to advance low-carbon infrastructure projects from initial idea to getting to a robust business case. Therefore, it's really crucial for us to support the early stage of project preparation. And that's why we as a German government are very happy to support the City Climate Finance GAP Fund through the ICI, the International Climate Initiative, together with our partner ministry, the BMZ, and our partner, Luxembourg. And the GAP Fund really closes this crucial gap because it's the first fund dedicated to support cities in the very early stages of project development. It does climate action planning on the World Bank side, it does technical assistance for project prep, and on the EIB side, and it really strengthens projects to the point where they are likely to receive further support downstream from other PPFs, and then attract public and private finance, both local and also international. We believe that in order to efficiently link urban project ideas to funding, appropriate sources of funding need to be identified as early as possible and really depending on the local context. Therefore, it's a great honor also to have the city's representatives here today, and I'm looking forward very much to hearing about their experiences and lessons learned with Project Prep. Project Prep plays a crucial role in the entire value chain. Therefore, for instance, Felicity and other projects supported by the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Actions will also present their approach and work. I'm really excited to hear about that, and we're also happy that we can take this concept forward with the Felicity 2 program in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. In addition, we strongly believe, as also Priscilla mentioned, that strategic alliances between the initiatives are really key to improving the pipeline. Therefore, Gap Fund, Felicity, and others around are crucial members of LUCI, the Leadership for Urban Climate Investment, which is really an ambitious framework that strengthens cities' access to climate finance by connecting project prep facilities, technical assistance initiatives around the world, and really leveraging each other's comparative advantages to really get projects into implementation. To increase ambition, LUCI has set targets to reach by 2025. For instance, enhancing project preparation capacity in 2,000 cities. Even though there are already various PPFs, not only the ones that are German funded, but so many around the world, from which we will later on also, there still need to do much more than the available supply. We need broader project preparation finance. We need financing throughout the whole value chain, from public and private, also domestic finance, but also international sources. And for us as a national government, we need to recognize also that multi-level cooperation is super important. So the national level needs to support the local level. That's why Germany, through the IKI, currently supports not only the GAP Fund, which also we hope to replenish soon and reach its $100 million goal to support even more cities and projects, but we also support Felicity 2, as I mentioned. We also support the CCFLA and LUCI, and we also just yesterday at the IDFC Pavilion here at COP launched a new flagship project implemented with 5 national development banks around the world, which is really aimed at strengthening their urban climate portfolios, so they can really offer their cities the right financing tools. So the time to act is really now in order to implement climate-friendly urban development, and we can only really achieve this jointly. So thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to the discussions, and handing over back to the moderator, Priscilla. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. That's so different, right, to be next to each other. So, well, thank you so much. Agree. We are talking here at COP so much about implementation, but we need a lot more project preparation support. We need a lot more funding to it, and we need something very particular, which is good examples on how cities have done it, and that's what we're going to start hearing now. So I want to we're going to have 3 cities presenting the project preparation support they receive, and we're going to try to understand the challenges, the opportunities, some of the lessons learned. And we shouldn't diminish the importance of understanding lessons learned, because all we hear is that cities need to learn from others what they have done, ideas on projects. So this is a very important thing for us. So the first city I would like to call is Alex Kivumbi from Makindi in Uganda, and he will make a presentation also with Andrea Whiteman from our WI group. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Priscilla. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Yes, once again, I'm Alex Kivumbi. I'm presenting the Sustainable Waste Management Project for Makindi, Sabagabo, Chira, Nansana, and Entebbe Municipal Councils in Uganda. Next screen, please. Yeah, I'll talk about the challenge and the background. The 4 municipalities are located in the Greater Kampala metropolitan area and have a combined population of 1.8 residents. These municipalities face a dual challenge of poor solid waste management, coupled with increasing greenhouse gas emissions. In 2025, the waste sector in the Greater Kampala metropolitan area is projected to contribute over 1.9 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And currently, the region, that is Greater Kampala, only has one gazetted landfill called Chitezi, which receives over 1,000 tons of waste per day. And this only represents 50% of the waste generated in the area. The rest is indiscriminately disposed in wetlands, drainage channels, or burnt. Next screen, please. Yeah, then I'll go to the objective of this particular project and maybe touch a little bit on its current status. Well, the project aims to contribute to climate change mitigation while enhancing adaptation and leveraging core benefits of mitigation, like green jobs, improved aesthetics and livability. This is mainly through undertaking sustainable waste to energy, waste to feeds, basically waste to valuable materials, through undertaking initiatives like black soldier fly technology, community biogas, briquetting, compost. So the project is expected to reduce between 60 and 65,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents in the municipalities over a 15-year period. Now, this can be scaled up to over 7 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent if the entire Wakiso district is covered, because these municipalities lie in Wakiso district. Now, the current status of the project, I also start with the background. So these cities, the four municipalities had an idea of what to undertake in order to address the challenge, that is the challenge of waste and greenhouse gas emissions. However, they had to undertake studies to prove that their ideas are right. Yet the cities lacked adequate financial resources to conduct such studies. So subsequently, the cities, under the initiative of Machindie, reached out to the GAP Fund, which approved the application in a pretty short time. And an experienced consultancy firm, that is RWA Consultancy, was selected to come and conduct a pre-feasibility study in Uganda. Work commenced way back in February 2022. And as we talk now, some 8 months. Next screen, please. Yes, as cities, we face specific challenges while trying to put together projects. Not only our city, but even other cities. Of course, the biggest challenge is lack of baseline and supportive data. In our city, I can talk about detailed population data, leave alone the disaggregated data, male and female, but sometimes you need more detailed data. The age categories, the incomes, the malnutrition rates, all that is lacking. We also lack data. We lacked a specific greenhouse gas inventory for the city. We are basing on one for Kampala, which was not giving a very good picture. Of course, the other challenges city face, including ours, they lack committed and passionate teams. Project work is demanding. It needs a committed team. If you don't have a committed team, you cannot make it. Committed and passion, that's the driver. So the other challenge is pessimism among stakeholders. Of course, a city like ours, we are normally used to getting transfers from the central government and maybe some little local revenue that we collect. So if some stakeholders feel that you're trying to liaise with development partners, they feel that you may not make it actually. They are pessimistic. They are wondering whether you make it or not. Then the other challenge, a very big challenge, of course, is high expectation. project work involves a number of stages. There is the technical assistance phase, where the deliverables are mainly software activities. And then there is the implementation stage. So once stakeholders hear that your city has been approved for support, they think that in the next 1 month or so, the physical infrastructure will be set up. So this is a very big challenge. Then, of course, the other challenge that we've faced is failure to pilot some of the ideas. For example, like in our city, we talk about black soldier fly technology. This is kind of new to most of the stakeholders in the city. So before you can get their support, at least they will need to say a pilot set up somewhere, and maybe they could appreciate that. So next screen, please. Yes, lessons that cities can learn from the process of accessing technical assistance. This is my experience. Of course, one of them is that joint applications are attractive for project preparation facilities because they cover wider areas and target bigger populations. So in our case, we have more than 4 cities that signed a consortium agreement and are working together. And I think we are getting there. Then cities should have in place a pipeline of projects which have been approved by their respective councils and other relevant entities, and even reflected in their long-term plans. So don't wait for an opportunity to arise. For example, a call is open, and then you think of identifying bankable projects. Please get prepared. Once the opportunity arises, jump to the opportunity and start moving. Then, of course, cities should have the ability to meet timelines in respect to submissions and meetings. If you're working with these project preparation facilities and development partners, you have to keep time. If you cannot do that, then you're out. Then, of course, the other aspect is consistency in regard to records and documents. For example, in our city, you cannot share information. And for example, you say that the size of the city is so many square kilometers. And then later, a week later, you're saying that the size of the city has reduced. That's not possible. One thing I've realized is that these preparation facilities and development partners share information. So if you submit wrong information somewhere, you'll get caught up somewhere. Then, of course, cities should have motivated and committed teams in place to handle project work. This one I hinted on earlier. Project work is so demanding, you should have a committed and motivated team to handle this kind of work. Otherwise, it takes time. People may give up along the way. Then, for ownership, for example, of the pre-feasibility study that is being undertaken in our city, there was need to establish a good working relationship between the GAP fund, the consultants, and the technocrats and the local leaders. So actually, as a city, we were involved in the formulation of the terms of reference for the consultant. I think that's where ownership starts. Then when the consultant was selected and he came to Uganda, we worked together. They introduced themselves. We had a very cordial relationship. I personally introduced him to the technocrats, the mayors, such that there is a very good working relationship. And whenever the consultant has been working on reports, before producing the final report, he seeks our input into the draft such that we can seek clarification or make it better before he can produce the final report. But above all, passion is the biggest driver. If there is no passion, if everything that I've talked about is perfect, when there's no passion, we are not going to get there. So we appeal to your support beyond the technical phase. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex, and I completely agree with you, like that we need to have passion to do projects, but we need more. And I think you were able to show to us like we need data, and we need to work with other cities and work better on the applications to make them attractive, among other topics. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. So next in line, I will have Daphne Osman Gulu, who is a nature-based solution specialist at the World Bank, and Chloe McKinnon, who is a consultant in Group WHEAT, to tell us a little bit more about the project in the city of Kinshasa.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Priscilla. And also, Alex, thank you very much for the interesting presentation. We do really recognize a lot of points that you were presenting. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from wherever you are connecting. And hello, everyone in Egypt. So my name is Defne Osmanoglu, and it's an honor to speak here today at COP27 and highlight the work that we are doing at the World Bank on nature-based solutions. As Priscilla just mentioned, I'm a team member of the Global Program on Nature-Based Solutions, or NBS in short, how we call it, which is our program at the World Bank where we develop knowledge on nature-based solutions and help cities and countries globally to find green solutions to their problems. And we also connect experiences around the world to learn from each other. And that's also why we are happy to be here at this event. Today, we would like to share some insights on how, with the support of the GAP Fund, we are supporting the World Bank team in Kinshasa with the integration of NBS in the investment project by conducting a study on NBS for climate resilience and, in particular, carbon sequestration. I'm pleased to present this together with Chloe McKeown, who leads the study from our consultant side, which is Group WIT. Before we move on, the NBS illustrated on the right of the slide are examples that we commonly consider in cities, grouped in 14 typologies. And as you can see, ranging from large-scale NBS such as forests and wetlands to smaller-scale solutions like urban farming and bioretention areas. And during our presentation, you will hear more about how we consider these type of NBS in Kinshasa. Next slide, please. So as you all well know, and Priscilla and Paul already highlighted, cities worldwide, including Kinshasa, face different complex challenges. Climate risks such as flooding and heat risk are becoming a more central issue in many places and are especially hitting the poor and the vulnerable. And they often come together with a lack of economic opportunities, solid waste management issues, urban development issues, and loss of biodiversity. And as you can see in the upper images, Kinshasa is a city with exponential demographic and urban growth. Today, the city has about 15 million inhabitants, and this is growing every day by 2,000 inhabitants and 5 hectares of urban land. And this urban growth is, of course, having tremendous impact to remaining natural areas. And climate change scenarios in Kinshasa show an average temperature increase of nearly 4.5 degrees Celsius by 2100, and an increase of extreme events such as floods and landslides. And examples of these events in Kinshasa already happening are shown in the photos below. And with such challenges, NBS, nature-based solutions, are interesting and effective solutions as they have the potential to reduce climate risks while bringing additional benefits to people and nature. And that is why NBS are now considered under the Kinalenda investment project in Kinshasa. Next slide, please. So on the left of this slide, you see an overview of the Kinalenda project, a 500 million investment project of the World Bank that is currently being implemented. The objective of this project is to improve urban management, infrastructure, and socio-economic opportunities in Kinshasa, and investments include flood and erosion risk reduction measures that also aim to improve the quality of the urban environment at the same time. So on the right of the slide, in the gray part, you see a summary of the efforts under the project to scope nature-based solutions. The GAP Fund supported the project with $250,000 US, and this grant is used for our study conducted now by Group WIT to assess urban NBS for greenhouse gas reduction and other resilience benefits in Kinshasa. The World Bank's global program on NBS is also helping the project by providing technical experts and tools such as the Urban NBS Catalog and our new NBS Opportunity Scan. And an interesting lesson from this TA is that there can be a gap between informing the project directly and the upstream approach from our GAP Fund study, as local and high-level objectives can be different. So during the study, some priorities changed also along the way, and this requires a flexible approach of the teams. Something that really helped us was that we have a strong collaboration between the World Bank local team, the government, the GAP Fund, the Global Program on Nature-Based Solutions, and Group WIT. And in that sense, the study has been a co-development which helps everyone to be aligned on the priorities. So now I would like to give the word to Chloe to tell more about our study. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So, as mentioned by Daphne, Group 8 was assigned to identify a strategy for a nature-based solution in Kinshasa. The study aims to select a combination of NBS that best contribute to the three following objectives. First, carbon sequestration, disaster risk management, and socio-economic co-benefits. To achieve this goal, we propose the following tasks. First, for each NBS, we identified the potential location for their implementation. This is what we call GIS analysis of the suitability criteria. It consists in analyzing the physical conditions, such as the topography or the composition of the soil, to determine where each type of NBS could be implemented. For example, urban farming cannot take place where there are steep slopes or where the soil is 100% sand. Then, step 2, we compared the NBS contribution to the project objectives. We scored each NBS family in Kinshasa's context to quantify their response to the project's objectives. For instance, urban farming is high ranked in socio-economic co-benefits, but when it comes to carbon sequestration, the urban forests have the highest scores. The third step is the one leading to the NBS strategy. It consists in the selection of the best NBS per potential location and the prioritization of projects. Thanks to a GIS algorithm, we are able to choose the NBS that is best appropriate for each potential location. In parallel, we are also testing our approach by downscaling the recommendation at project scale. And the pilot project consists in erosion control in Kimwenza district. Next slide, please. The outputs of our study are the following. First, there are 2 datasets that are ready to be handed over to the counterparts, and an NBS opportunity scan that identifies the potential for each NBS family. The second output is a tool based on Excel, which compares the NBS in terms of carbon capture, disaster risk mitigation, and socioeconomic co-benefits. This tool was designed for Kinshasa, but can be easily adapted to other locations. The third output is a vegetation atlas that presents each of the plants that could be integrated in the NBS for Kinshasa, with related benefits, prerequisites, and recommendations for the implementation about cost, operation and maintenance, etc. It aims at downscaling the approach by informing the decision-making process when it comes to project implementation. As a conclusion on the technical side, the main challenge of this project was to build on previous NBS approaches and tools from the World Bank, from GPNBS, while improving the consideration of the NBS benefits. Group 8 teams highly appreciated the chance we had to experiment a new way of working in a day-to-day collaboration between the technical teams of the World Bank. So thank you, Daphne, and I will leave you the floor for the closing word.
We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so thank you very much, Chloe, and everyone for listening. We hope we have provided a good overview of our approach and the study that has been supported by the GAP Fund. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Our information is in the slides. And we would also like to thank the GAP Fund team for their great support and collaboration, and the EIB for this opportunity to speak here at COP27. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daphne and Chloe. And I think you have raised so many important points. Nature-based solutions is something that a lot of cities are working on. Very, very difficult. Still a lot of challenges on financing it, and seeing that you are doing a lot of work trying to understand the scenario, how take the data and put it together in this GAP Fund studies. It's very important. Something that you mentioned that I wanted to highlight too is like how, in terms of priorities, like you had flexibility enough to change it and to adapt. And I think this is very important when we're talking about the project, and a lot of what the GAP Fund, based on its mandate, can help the cities do. So actually understand better their challenges and try to find solutions, even if the first solution is not necessarily what we want to achieve. So I'm going to call now our third city. So Roger Peniche Sala, I don't know if Roger pronounced it correctly. So Roger is the principal advisor for climate change and sustainability and development for the municipality of Naucalpan de Juarez. And yeah, we'd love to hear about your experience.
Hello everybody. Hello Priscilla. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. Also, I want to now. I'm gonna present our project. We are in a different stage of this project because we are almost launching the tender. So we have passed the pre-feasibility and also the feasibility stages. Since 7 years, we have been working with the project. Since 4, we have been working with Felicity. They have been monitoring and advising throughout all this process since 4 years. So I want to mention and thank also to Felicity for this support. Our project is also waste management, as we see of the Uganda's project, but it's a different approach because this has more like a mitigation approach project. But of course, we have a lot of similarities because the problematic is that the city do not have a good landfill. We not accomplish all the legal or the normativities. And also with the organic, we have some leaches that are affecting all the water the water in the lands, and also the methane that goes to the atmosphere. So we defined to implement an MBT facility. This means mechanical biological treatment plant, and include 3 components. First, a treatment mechanical plant, make the separation of the organics and inorganics. The inorganics go for recycling processes, and the organics go to capture the biogas from the methane. And with the biogas, we are thinking in valorize to generate vehicle natural gas. This is based in a circular economy approach. We calculate that with this project, we will mitigate 77 tons of carbon per year. This represents take out of the street like 15 cars. The capex, the investment of the project is $65 million. And now I'm going to show the process that we take. This is the typically project development cycle. We started with a pre-feasibility. For this pre-feasibility, we received some technical support from the EPA, from the United States. In this phase, we estimate or we calculate like the main different feasibility that we will need in the future. But Of course, we do not make so deeper the studies, but we have some preliminary numbers for the financial, for the technical, the social, the environmental, and also we start to make a financial readiness to identify some schemes or possibilities to can finance our project in the future. After that, in the feasibility stage, we implement like a blending finance scheme. That means that at this moment, we made 13 feasibility studies. 7 of them, we did it with international cooperation. There are some of the organizations and institutions that we work with, like the CCAC, the Global Methane Initiative, the UK Pact, and with Felicity, we have two different supports. One of them are in the developing of some specific assessments and studies, but also we have like a strategic advisory in all the process. They join us in taking some of the decisions. And I think that one of the main challenges of this feasibility stage was that in Mexico, the municipal governments have a period of 3 years, and always there's a possibility of changing some officials. So to have the capability to make enough strong the project that can go through the different administrations, have the guiding truth that permits that maintain the basis in order to go forward and maintain all the different information going into different political moments. And for this purpose, the international cooperation was key, because we received a lot of support in presenting and in document all the different aspects of the project and presenting into to the mayors. This is currently we have the third mayor with this project, and we can go and maintain the project in all this process. The other important thing is that in this blending finance of this phase, we also include own resources of the city and national resources of our country. So this amount that is like $1.5 million that cost all this stage of feasibility studies was paid like 50% with national resources of Mexico. Half of that 50% was own resources of the city, and the remaining was international cooperation. We think that the promoters has to take the leadership and own the project. I think that this is crucial because with this basis, we know what are the gaps, the specific gaps that we need to ask to the cooperators. So I think that it's a different point of view that that the international cooperation ask in filling some technical gaps that we need as promoters. That a different view is that the international cooperation takes the process as own and I think that is very risky because all the international intervention has the beginning and the end. So the risk that cuts the process is very high if the promoter don't take the leadership in taking the project into the financial close. So now in this moment we are in this time of the process in the financial closure. Also, for the investment phase, we implement a blending finance that includes a grant from the federal government of Mexico for 30%, and the remaining 70% it has to be private investment because we determined to implement the project with a PPP scheme. And from that 70% of private investment, we also make a blending finance because 20% is equity and the remaining is a loan. And in the loan, we are considering that a part has be financed by a developing bank and another part by a private bank, national private bank. And the incomes are also a mix. This is also, I think, that a good lesson learned, because in West sector we create value that in the baseline we do not create value because all the ways go to the landfills, and this is a linear view. And now we are implementing, or we want to implement a circular economy scheme. And that means that we reintroduce value to the economy, and we can produce the biofuel, the natural gas, and also the recyclables. So these both products or commodities generate value. So almost 50% of the incomes of projects are created by the own project. And another part that gives the bankability to the project is a payment that the city gives with guarantee of payment, and that guarantee payment of the city give the certainty that the loans will be paid from part of the developer. Some of the key aspects that we learned in this long process is, first of all, blending finance, because it's very expensive, the feasibility phase, and of course we have some risk in the investment phase. So the balance of risk are key. And how can we balance those risks? First, with good feasibility studies, good and solid information. Second, make combination of public and private financing. And this means concessional market rates, and also including, in this case, a grant. We think that perhaps, of course, each project is different. It's a tailor-made project. Perhaps some of waste management do not need a grant, but in our case in Mexico, we do not have another project that includes digesters and the treatment of organic to capture biogas. So to reduce that risk, we apply for the grant. Of course, it takes a lot of time to get the approvals of the federal government, but we hope that our example can help to another Mexican cities to make more quickly the process, because there are, at least in the waste sector, there are many assessments. There are a lot of things that are almost the same. So we can skip some steps that we walk. And another key aspect is also the legal financial structuring, because when arrives the moment of the financing of the project, we have to have very clear how can we make less risky, more transparent, give more certainty about the returning of the investments of the private investors, of the banks. Of course, the public sector, who is in charge of the waste management, they have the possibility of choose if they want to implement the project, or if they need or want to include the private investment. But if they choose the scheme of private investment, they have to give some guarantees to make real those investments. And of course, the other part is the climate, all the climate issues. So we also think that in this sector, there are very good opportunities in monitoring, reporting, and verification of the emissions that could be an additional income for projects. In our case, we do not include that because we think that the markets are not ready, but perhaps in the near future, I think that it could be included. It's a lot of information. We have a very few time, but I hope that this information can be useful for this table.
Roger, and I'm going to pronounce in as my language, Roger. It's very, very useful. All the information that you put forward. I think like this specific project, it responds to so of the many challenges that we always list for cities. So I think you were first, like the complexity of the project, like you had to do like 13 different feasibility studies, and I think you were able to work with different facilities to respond to the challenge of the complexity of putting this together. Also, very much of the point that you raised on the difficulties of having to go through 3 different mayors, and how this support from project preparations and the international community have helped you to do it. So I think this is a very practical example and lessons learned of how other cities can also see the support, not only thinking about the project itself, but using the support to make it continue through different governments. And finally, all the structure that you have done, the financial structure, which is normally very complex and difficult to cities, but the way that you managed to combine different sources of finance. So very, very interesting project example. Now we're going to actually ask questions. I'm going to do it initially, but hopefully we have the time to hear some other questions from the people that are watching us. So for now, I would love to, and I think we can stop sharing the screen so we can see more people, but I would love to call 3 other amazing speakers that are going to help and answer some questions, and then ask the cities and the speakers that have just showed the presentations to stay there, because I'm also going to ask you a couple of questions. So for the panel, we're going to also have Jerry Muscat, who is the head of Urban Advisory Division at EIB, the European Investment Bank, and he's responsible for the bank's advisory support for cities. We're going to have Agustin Maria, Senior Urban Specialist at the World Bank and the Program Manager of the World Bank City Climate Finance Gap Fund. And finally, last but definitely not least, we are very happy to have David Jackson from UNCDF. So he's the Director of the Local Development Finance Practice from the UN Capital Development Fund. So I will start actually going back to the Uganda example, so the city of Makindi, and I wanted Andrew, I think Andrew Whiteman, that also worked on the project from RWI Group. I wanted to hear a bit from you too, if you could tell us like how the project that you have supported, developed, and covers several municipalities in the Greater Kampala area. That's what we have heard, and if there were trade-offs between coordinating different stakeholders and achieving the sufficient scale. And if you could tell us a little bit more about that and how you overcome them with the city.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the questions. Yeah, I mean, first of all, we're working with a very committed bunch of people who had brought the project forward pre-COVID and formulated the project together. So we walked into a situation where we had a very active, we were truly supporting a process that was of integrity, which was ongoing. The COVID itself was a tricky part of it, because of course during that time momentum was lost, and so our job as consultants advisors was to get in there and basically to try to generate momentum and move forward. Working together in waste management, waste and resource management sector, we suffer greatly from poor baseline data, as we all know. So we adopted a primary data collection phase of 2 months, which actually stretched over, focusing on organics, essentially from non-household sources. Because in the situation we have in the Greater Kampala metropolitan area, specifically Wakiso district, where the municipalities are located, we have very, very low collection service coverage of waste collection services, and therefore, you know, in 3 of the 4 municipalities, under 15% of service coverage. So we have very much a situation where we got stuck in on baseline data collection, and that baseline data collection it created like a cohort of activity which enabled momentum to be gained back after that quite important delay during the COVID time. So we got stuck in terms of scale and the importance of multiple municipalities. Certainly in the case of the Wakiso district municipalities, it's very, very important to generate confidence, as Alex has already expressed. We need to find an approach whereby we implement small scale projects which can be mobilized quickly and managed, low risk projects which can be managed, locally managed. And then, you know, the approach is often successful in sub-Saharan African cities, where essentially it's like implement, make it work, replicate approach. So in terms of organics recovery and approaches to climate mitigation and adaptation from the waste management sector, in sub-Saharan African context, the approach is very much lends itself to a programmatic approach, whereby different financiers can bring their finance and knowledge and technical assistance in at different times, at different amounts for different things, depending on what they do. So we're designing currently together with Alex and the teams across the municipalities what we call an open program, which is also going to rely on private financing for the much of the operational costs. We've identified low-hanging fruit investments which are not too blocky, and essentially now is the key to attracting the finance and getting it into place. There is no shortage of demand across the municipalities, but there is a huge demand across Wakiso district. And as I say, with this implement, make it work, replicate approach could lead to transformational change over a fairly short horizon, we believe.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna jump into this last point that you raised on now that we actually already in the phase of financing and the fact of like also understanding the private financing costs investments, and ask actually Daphne or Chloe, please jump in both if you have anything to say about this. So how the gap fund support everything that you have presented to us, and we saw that it's still in this project different from the others, is still very early stage for future finance. How do you think this TA can leverage future investments, and how you're thinking about that now? And I don't know who wants to jump in first.
I will jump in first, yeah. Yeah, so thank you very much for this question. I think one of the most important reasons is that the study is directly informing the project while raising awareness and interest on MBS with the government, but also other projects for potential new investments or funding. So first of all, as an example, the Kinalenda project in Kinshasa is an ongoing investment which is being implemented. And with the study, we scope how we can integrate MBS into the investment. And more specifically, an example is that we, in the project now, received additional financing for the project for stabilizing an erosion risk hotspot in the city. And while this study that's funded by the GAP Fund is still ongoing, we had to adjust some objectives. And now Group WEED is assessing which MBS would be suitable for erosion risk control in this hotspot. So this means that with this study, we are getting results that will make MBS could be directly implemented. Yeah, so, and the other point that I wanted to mention is that, as I said, this TA is raising interest of the government, and they are actually actively involved. Our counterpart from the government, from Cellular Infra, gave a presentation during a GAP Fund event where they underlined the importance of these type of solutions, of nature-based solutions in Kinshasa, but also broadly in the country. Already other cities than Kinshasa raised their interest in DRC and now are looking at conducting the same approach to understand more like what they can do with nature-based solutions, and even beyond DRC in other countries such as Central African Republic. We can also learn from this study, and we now already started a new engagement in the country to scope potential MBS investments there. Yeah, and lastly, to conclude, this is also something that Group WEED highlights, is that the outputs from the Group WEED work are very suitable and to replicate our work and like apply it in other areas as they develop tools such as the GIS tool Chloe told about, and the vegetation atlas, which can be used in other areas. So yeah, in that sense, with this TA, we are leveraging future investments and potential funding sources, not only in Kinshasa, but also beyond in the country and globally. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. And yes, like the fact that you're also involving the national government in this kind of partnership and be involved locally, but also nationally to spread the not only the findings that you have and the methodologies of something that very important. And thank you so much for highlighting this. I want to then to go back to Roger and then understand, like, I think different from the other projects, although we have a waste management project that we heard about, you are very much on the final end, let's say, of the project preparation development phase. And I think you mentioned a bit that to us during the presentation, but if you can tell us like the steps that you are taking and planning to move forward the implementation phase of this project. And if you can detail us a bit more about the financing that you told us about during the presentation.
Yes, of course. Yes, currently we are working in different steps in parallel. One of them is preparing the PPP contract and their annexes. For this, we also receive some technical assistance from Felicity and another organizations. I want to remark that there are some very technical issues that it's not easy find in their own city those technical profiles to develop. So I think that this is absolutely an opportunity of give the assistance. But also we are working in defining the legal and financial structure of projects, because as I mentioned before, this project will receive a grant from the federal government. So that means that we have to put the different conditions of give the legal certainty for the different investments. That means that, for example, the project will need a trust for the administration and source of payments, but also the city has to create another trust to give the guarantee of payments. So in fact, that when if perhaps some years later in the project, the mayor do not want to pay to the PPP, this trust enter into operation and give the payments directly to the trust of the administration of project. Those are the kinds of things that give a very important message of certainty to the investors. Also, the project has to hire external supervisor management in order to check the accomplish of technical performance, and also the accomplish of the use of the money. Of course, in the trust, we define what are the priority of the different payments. And of course, for example, to the banks, they want to know that they are in the top of the list, that they will receive the first the payment. Those are the things that we are structuring in this moment. Also, we start to promoting the project with companies that are in the market of the waste sector. Of course, for this project, it's very important that they have experience and the technical capacity to commercialize the gas and the recyclables, because as you remember, those variable incomes represent almost the 50% of the total incomes of projects. So we need that the companies knows very well how to move in those markets. And of course, the other part of the incomes is the payment from the city. So to give the guarantee of the payments, we also are make the process with our Minister of Finance that represents the registration of the PPP contract, the registration of the commitment of payment of the city, and that gives the circle that we need to give the bankability of the project.
This is such an interesting project, and all the structures that you have put together to actually come across many of the challenges that we hear, right? Like the trust from the private sector and the fund and the participation of the national government. So very, very impressive. I'll call now Jerry, who has a lot of experience working with cities and funding. And I know that you have listened to the presentation, and I wanted actually to know your reaction, your view on the key success factors that would allow these projects to become bankable or investable, but by an institution such as EIB, and if you can tell us other examples that you have worked with that you think are good to learn from.
Thanks, Priscilla. And I mean, first of all, I'd just like to congratulate all the speakers on presenting the projects. I think they're three really fascinating projects, all different in their own right. And I'm very pleased to see that these projects have been receiving support from the GAP Fund and from Felicity, because indeed this is exactly what we created these programs to do. And so our goal is actually to let's say try to find ways that these projects can be financed by either the EIB or by other financiers. And so we're very often involved in discussions with the bankers internally about these kinds of issues. I guess the questions that really always come up first and foremost are, who is the borrower and where is the cash flow to repay the loans coming from? And I guess that I understood this reasonably well from the third project in Naucalpan, which is obviously the most complicated one as well. But I guess that for an institution like the EIB, there is quite a lot of challenge in understanding how projects with multiple municipalities are actually going to work financially. So I would say, understanding in the case of the Makindi project, how the municipalities will work together, what would be the legal entity that would be responsible for borrowing and receiving the financing and implementing the projects, and understanding a little bit about how the revenue collection will work and how will there be separate revenue collection and separate projects for each of these small projects that are being implemented, and then the scaling up, or because I think that these kinds of issues really relate to how the financing could work, whether one is talking about grouping a project together and scaling it to enable a financial institution like ours, which typically would probably find a project below about 20-30 million euro to be too small for a loan, and we only finance 50%, so we really be talking about projects 40-50 million in size. So whether we're talking about a direct financing like that to a group of municipalities, or whether we're talking about perhaps lending through a financial institution in Uganda that could finance the smaller projects, and then we kind of scale that up. So that would be the kind of question that I would I think it'd be really important. And then just one more perhaps, because I want to leave time for the other colleagues to speak as well. I mean, on the question of the nature-based solutions in Kinshasa, I think it's great that the team are on ways of injecting nature-based solutions into an existing investment program. I guess the challenge that we find at EIB in looking at nature-based solutions is that typically, again, nature-based solutions are not necessarily revenue generating in their own right, although it'd be interesting to see in Kinshasa whether there are revenues coming out of some of those nature-based solution investments. And which type of projects are they actually being put into? I mean, are there projects like urban regeneration, like property development, like affordable housing, where there could be revenues coming through the projects that can actually also incorporate the nature-based solutions? Or is it really a public sector improvement program to tackle resilience and mitigation, which obviously is fantastic as well. So these kinds of questions, which we often find, but I think it's a good approach. We're doing the same thing at EIB to try to look at multiple interventions across the city investment program with nature-based solutions, and then finance them as part of a wider city package. So these are some of the considerations that we would be typically looking at with regard to these kinds of projects, but really fascinating projects. Thanks, Priscilla.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jerry. I was taking notes also of your points and what you have raised to us. And then I want to ask Augustin also if you're two hats, so you're gap funding hat, but of course your experience at the World Bank, and ask the same question actually, like hearing all these projects, what are the key success factors that would allow these projects to become bankable? How do you see that coming through?
Thanks, Priscilla. First, let me join Jerry in congratulating the presenters. It was really a great set of presentations, and I was really happy to see the breadth of what the Gap Fund, along with other programs like Felicity, can support. The thing that really struck me listening to the presentation was the fact that when you work on cities, you really work with a complex system. You're not working on one specific solution and one specific problem that you can solve through only one project. And I know that the Gap Fund mission is to support early stage project preparation, but I really heard, and it resonated when one of the speakers talked about this programmatic approach, because when you want to address climate challenges at the city scale, you really need to think about the programmatic approach. And if you want to reach the scale and achieve the type of impact that we are looking for, you really need to think about the long term. And I think that, on the World Bank side, when we work with cities, often we engage on the long term and not only support specific investment by cities, but strengthening the municipal systems for budgeting, for planning, for implementing projects. And I think this is something that it's important to look at when we support cities in implementing climate action. And I think I heard the importance of building capacity at the local level. As I said, improving the system. So not only supporting cities in developing a specific project, but thinking of the type of systems that we want to embed the climate dimension into. And I think that just like I think the Gap Fund is important in embedding the climate into the DNA of organizations like the World Bank and the EIB, but also on the other side, embedding the climate in the DNA of city administration, national level institutions. Now, one challenge is, where should we really try to have this technical capacity at the local level? And I think that we heard the example of the cities in the greater Kampala metropolitan area. And when you have areas like this, the question is, how best to build the technical capacity. We see that we have very complex problems to deal with. So individual municipalities are not necessarily the better position to handle those technical complex systems, and there are specific technical functions that would be relevant to group at the metropolitan level, sometimes even at the national level. So I think those are some of the questions we have to think about, not only on the public sector side, but also on the private sector side. And the example of the nature-based solutions was interesting, and I think that the output of this work in terms of helping the cities map the opportunities will be very important, but it will only really achieve its objective when also the local private sector, the engineers that are going to design those specific investments that the World Bank Kinelendi program will finance, when those local engineers not only look at the textbooks that they had in engineering school 20 years ago, but are able to refer to those new solutions that are being identified. Maybe I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Augustin. Very, very interesting. Completely agree with you that the complex system need actually a broad response. And I want to talk to you, David, and thank you so much for joining. I know probably you're also having internet issues, that you're also in Egypt. And like, after hearing, I'm going to give you, you're going to be our last speaker, but like after what everyone said, how is your approach of local financing fitting in the experience you heard so far? And where do you see the bottlenecks and the solutions? So if you can tell us a bit based on everything everyone said.
Thank you so much indeed, Priscilla, and thanks everybody for the presentations. The 3 projects were also extremely interesting, and it's been I think a very interesting discussion. And maybe I'd like to group my points into 4, I think. Firstly, I think I fully agree, and it's been stressed by others, in particular the last speaker, that one needs to look at the holistic financing ecosystem. But then that has implications that I'm going to come on to in a moment. And of course, you know, with many of the colleagues here, we're involved in the Malaga Coalition for a financial ecosystem that works for cities and local governments. And that includes stable intergovernmental fiscal transfers and predictable own source revenue, asset management, which is a key part, actually managing the assets, domestic capital markets, city-friendly investment funds and guarantees. So we need all of those. But of course, this conversation has been about the city-friendly investment funds and the investments in city projects. And so the first thing that comes to mind from what I've heard is the question of the additionality, the climate additionality, mitigation, adaptation, or the nature-based solutions additionality. And I think the need for us to maybe professionalize a little bit more and to share experiences a little bit more with cities about how one can log that additionality and thereby potentially attract cheaper capital or grant funding because of it. I didn't hear anybody, but I may be mistaken, mention nationally determined contributions. I didn't hear anybody mention national adaptation plans. Excuse me if you did. But what's interesting here at COP is that, I mean, of course, those are the country's commitments. And the message that we're putting across is that local government finance is climate finance. So if you want to drive your nationally determined contributions and drive your national adaptation plans, local government finance and city-led projects is a way to do it. But therefore, you will have to prove additionality. You can't just wing it. So, you know, is there a serious carbon additionality, greenhouse gas additionality here? Is there what is the adaptation change? And there are methodologies out there now. There are global standards out there now. So I think that's the first point that I would make. We have just recently completed with the government of Tanzania getting a green status for the Tanga Water Bond, which is a subnational infrastructure bond. And you know, we're hoping that this will fully be certified as a green bond. And that experience shows the hoops you have to jump through to get that certification status. But so there are also themes that came up, you know, the waste to energy theme, the nature-based solution theme, and waste to energy is a big one. And that's an area where perhaps we can do a little bit more learning across these technical assistance facilities. You know, we run our own, the International Municipal Investment Fund Technical Assistance Facility, plus other support. And we found in Bangladesh, Cambodia, a lot of waste to energy with a lot of similarities to what I've heard today. So I think we can do a bit more networking about some of these themes and thereby hopefully connect them to standards that will then hopefully attract kind of targeted capital that, or even grants. And that brings me to the second point a little bit, which is about the institutional embeddedness of these projects. And, you know, people have talked about programmatic approaches, but as a former city planner and somebody who used to work, you know, on urban development, the question that I had was not just a programmatic approach, but how do these projects fit into the wider city? Because one of the risks of making a project bankable is you kind of ring fence it to the extent that it actually divorces itself from the wider city. And it would have been interesting to have heard a little bit more about that. I mean, I know it's always a dichotomy, but how do these fit into the wider city? It's not just about the programmatic approach, although that is very important. It's also about the holistic city planning approach. You know, the city is a unit. It's an, you know, a living, breathing thing, and these projects are part of that. and what are the trade-offs in bringing these projects forward. So, and I think that's very important. I like the presentation from Mexico, the institutional arrangements that have had to be made in order to make this project work. And that's exactly what we do. I think our role, UNCDF, it's probably a little bit after some of the GAP fund status. It's where you're starting to do the actual structuring. And there's always institutional gymnastics that need to be done. And at central and local level, it's a multi-level experience. And I think what we heard from Mexico, we are hearing, we're working with in many other places. The Tanger example is one. Another one is Morocco, where again, we've had to do various things. And another one is the Ghana, the Kumasi project. So I think what you learn from that, and you mentioned mentioned federal government, you learn that it's indispensable to have contacts at central government. Central government that support is indispensable. And I think country by country will be putting together means of taking these projects forward. And there probably will need to be, so waste to energy solutions that work for Mexico, waste to energy solutions that work for Uganda, and they'll be different in different cases, partly because of that central to local relationship. And then that brings me to the financing. So, and really building on a lot of the questions that Jerry raised. So in Morocco, we've managed to, from our own books, make a concessional loan to a local government. And this is a smaller amount. I mean, it's much less than 20 million euros. And maybe I'll come on to the amount is another point I would like to mention, the ticket size. We've managed to make a concessional loan. And under Moroccan legislation, a local government pays its energy bills, pays its bills, basically. A local government or a utility pays its bills before it pays its staff. So the first line item is your bills. And so if you can log the repayment into that, then that's a kind of guarantee, because the Audit Commission, the Ministry of Finance will insist that happens. And so we were able to structure something whereby we provide a loan, in solar street lighting is installed, and the loan is repaid with the principal, or the principal will be repaid, I should say, from the energy bill savings made in the electricity bill line of the budget. And then once that principal is repaid, of course, those savings just remain there. And so there's more fungible money available elsewhere. So that's Morocco specific. And the government has now decided to maybe look at taking that forwards and replicating that elsewhere. But that was blended. That wouldn't work at a market approach. But it is financing, not funding. And we've been talking about bankable projects, but maybe bankable is the wrong word. It's more financeable. It's more things that can stack up, that can make sense, that can be replicated, that can repay it, that can have a revenue stream, but that may need to be blended in some cases. And why not? I mean, we shouldn't forget that in OECD countries, a lot of the critical infrastructure was blended or public. So I think that's important. And I'm going to come on then to the ticket size and the different options for financing. So you mentioned, Jerry, 20 million euros. And what we're finding, the pipeline that we have for the International Municipal Investment Fund, we got a lot of projects coming in. Some were over $100 million, and some, like the one I described in Morocco, was $1 million. But that's $1 million that can be replicated in many other cities. So I think then there's a relation. There's also the issue of the type of financing. Is equity, debt? I heard the PPP for one of the projects, and that's something we didn't really touch on. And perhaps the earlier two, it was too soon to define what the type of financing would be. But in addition to PPPs, one thing that has worked for us in some places is special purpose vehicles that then take on debt for relatively smaller size projects. And then, of course, there's always the issue of the domestic bonds. So I think we'll need to start looking as we gain a kind of critical mass of these, is themes, what works, and then ticket sizes and the type of financing. But it was a wonderful 3 projects. And I really like the way we're getting into the details here. We're really getting into the nitty gritty. It's no longer just talking about it, it's actually doing it. And for me, that was the most important thing about this discussion. And the final word is, I think whatever the solution is, it has to be city friendly. And that's another reason why maybe the term bankable sometimes doesn't help, because it has to be city friendly on the city's terms, not just bankable on the bank's terms. because then it won't be transformative if it's only bankable on the bank's terms. So I think that's another element to come in. Oh, and one bullet point I forgot, I'm sorry, the sovereign, the contingent liability issue. We didn't discuss that, but one way to avoid that is guarantees. So I think one thing we need to look at are guarantee funds for cities as well, so that if there is an issue where the Ministry of Finance or someone says, sorry, you can't do this because it'll increase the total public sector debt and that will affect our credit rating or our borrowing limit, there's a way to mitigate against that. And the role of guarantees will be very important. I mean, the World Bank, of course, that's sovereign lending, but that can also be on granted or on lent down to the local level. There's also the intermediary financial institutions. We didn't talk about them, which we could also mention. So, but I think it was a very important seminar, and thank you so much for having it.
Thank you so much, David. I think we all agree that it was very interesting. We learned a lot. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time, but I think we managed to get to the point that we wanted. So we wanted to have some lessons learned from different gap fund initiatives. We did it through, we saw and we learned from projects that are in different project stages. And I'm going to summarize in 5 seconds what I have heard. So we need commitments from cities, and Alex has put it beautifully. We need passion for cities. We need them to want to do it, to lead these projects. It would be very useful to also have joint application of cities. Cities working together is attractive. It's attractive not only for funders, but it also help to structure more programmatic projects. We need flexible approach for project preparation. I think this was a very good point put it by the Kinshasa project. We need to be able to learn from the process, and we need to have necessarily grants and funds to do it. Infra projects, they will address climate challenges. They are very complex, and we need partners to do it. And maybe we don't need one project preparation, we need many. And I think this was a very, very good example on how to do it, and actually how this kind of partner and its international partners, they can also help navigate through the political changes at the city level, which was a very, very interesting example that was raised by the city of Juarez. So political changes, systematic and programmatic approaches, for sure, that's what we need. But we need the projects to fit, as David, Agustin, and also was raised by Jerry. So, but we need the projects to fit in cities and still be bankable, but let's use another word then, financeable, as David mentioned. So like, and we need for that different kind of financial approaches, that we need blended finance, and we need to understand a bit more better this instruments. So less word, less talking, more doing. That's what we should be saying this at COP, although it's the implementation COP. I hear a lot of talking. So let's start doing, and thank you so much for doing a lot and showing us concrete examples. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks. Nice to see you, Jerry. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
You.